So it's been about a month since my last Rambling While Runecrafting Lava Runes video, so today seemed like the right time since this morning I did just hit 100 million runecrafting experience, so I'm halfway to 200 mil now, and I want to say back on the grind and consistently runecrafting and not doing much else in the game, which is kind of what I've been hoping to get back to. The hours I've been putting into the game haven't been very high because I've been pretty busy with IRL stuff, but whenever I do play, I runecraft or I farm, and I don't do anything else, and that's kind of my plan until I finish runecrafting, to try to just stay as consistent with it as I can, get it done as soon as I can, and do the skill justice and not burn out again. So I guess I can start by doing kind of a retrospective on this year so far. It's now the beginning of September of 2017. This year has flown by incredibly fast. So I started runecrafting in December of 2016, so it's been 9 months since I started runecrafting. I runecrafted consistently until the end of May of 2017, and then I stopped, burned out, and did some other things for about 2 months. So I did the Infernal Cape, I did about 20 mil fishing XP or so, and I did, I think, 35 mil hunter or so, and after finishing that hunter, and the reason I was doing the hunter then is to make enough money to be able to finish farming, I decided to go back to runecrafting because I kind of just didn't feel right not runecrafting. For a while during that time I thought that I was going to be done with runecrafting for quite a while and maybe never go back to it, but and I was thinking of just doing fishing because fishing is a skill that I really enjoy, and it's another skill that I do want to get 200 mil in the somewhat near future. But once I was done with that hunter to make enough money for farming, and I figured I would go back to fishing and maybe go for 200 mil, I did fishing for a few days, and then I just didn't feel right, and didn't feel good to have that runecrafting 200 mil just not finished and kind of sitting there. And runecrafting, despite not necessarily being the skill that I enjoy the most out of all skills, is the skill that I've been working on for quite a while, and is the skill that I definitely want 200 mil in the most, because I think it's the most prestigious and difficult 200 mil in the game. It feels like runecrafting is the only skill that's more challenging and more impressive than mining, and I feel like if I give up on runecrafting now and can't successfully complete it, then I've sort of reached my limits, and I can't improve. Because I've already done mining, and I think that mining is the second most challenging skill behind runecrafting. Agility and fishing are both a bit slower as well. Agility, fishing, and runecrafting are all slower than mining. I guess Slayer is too, but fishing is almost the same XP rate and a bit easier, so I consider mining a more difficult 200 mil. Slayer is kind of its own ball game. For some people it's really easy because they just enjoy Slayer a lot. I think for me, Slayer actually might be more difficult than mining, but I'm not really sure. Agility is actually the slowest skill. It's slightly slower than runecrafting, even at Brimhaven, but agility is so much easier than any of those other skills that I feel like it's still kind of an easier 200 mil, and especially for doing Arty course, then it's so easy that I don't really consider it more challenging than mining. Runecrafting is lower APM than mining, but it's significantly slower and still requires a fair amount of focus, and at least for me personally, I've just found it more challenging than mining in general. With mining, I never really wavered at all, and I just kind of enjoyed the skill all the way through, but with runecrafting, it has been a lot harder for me. I have enjoyed it a lot at times, but there have been times where I really just did not like it, and it got to the point where I actually burned out, which is not something I thought that I would really do. But my mindset at the time of burning out was that I wasn't even halfway done, because I was at 88 mil XP. I wasn't really enjoying the skill, and I didn't really want to spend the next 8 or so months continuing to work on a skill that I didn't enjoy, and it just got to my head so much that I decided to stop. But I guess I am disappointed in myself for having burnt out of the skill and not done it consistently all the way through, but at the same time I definitely have learned something, and I feel like I've improved as a part of it. I did burn out, and I did some other things for a little while, but at least I didn't burn out of the game entirely, and I've come back to the skill, enjoying it again, wanting to be consistent with it again, and feeling fresh, I guess you could say. So I've been back to runecrafting for about 5 weeks, and progress has been slow. I've only gained 12 mil XP in 5 weeks, which is pretty bad, but that's primarily just because I am still working full-time IRL, and I will be for the next 4 months, and then I'll be back to classes right after that. And I also just moved into a new apartment with my girlfriend, so, you know, moving has been taking time, and I've obviously been spending more time with her since we live together now, and I don't really want to be spending every single second of my free time on the computer when I have her around. So I'm taking a somewhat relaxed approach to the game, but still trying to be efficient with the time that I do spend on it and make the most out of it in terms of runecrafting. But I'm doing my best to just accept the fact that I don't have nearly as much free time to play the game as I used to, and I won't for a long time, if ever again, because I'll be done with my internship at the end of December. I might have a week between then and when I start classes again, and then I'll be back to classes, and I'll probably be doing classes straight from early January until the end of June next year, and then I'll be doing another full-time internship for the second half of next year, so I will probably continue to move fairly slowly in the game and potentially lose some ranks and that kind of thing, but I've kind of been endeavoring to avoid worrying too much about high scores and progress and that kind of thing, and just focusing more on the gameplay and enjoying my time on the game as a means of relaxation and unwinding after all of my other responsibilities in life. I haven't been checking the high scores or checking Crystal Math Labs or anything like that anymore. I haven't actually even been going on Twitter, which is kind of similar, I guess, but I don't know, I've kind of just been retracting from some aspects of the community and of things that I just felt weren't really necessary, and trying to just simplify. And I guess that is a fairly good transition into a quick talk about all of the minimizations and simplifications that I've done over the past few weeks. I feel like I've been changing and intentionally trying to change some things, and so yeah, I haven't been going on Twitter really, and I haven't really felt like I've missed it. It was kind of, Twitter is fun for sure, but I don't know, you can get so caught up in it, and I found myself tweeting kind of impulsively sometimes, and just it occupied too much of my mind over things that were kind of silly and unnecessary. I would always be constantly refreshing my Twitter notifications and that kind of thing, and just felt wrong for some reason, so I decided to do away with it entirely. And I think it's been 3 weeks since I've been on Twitter or been tweeted. I've only been on there to respond to DMs, since there's some people that I still like to talk to, but I haven't missed it really at all, so I think I might keep that up, and maybe I'll tweet here and there more important things, but kind of get rid of the unnecessary chatter. Well, the reason I've paused here is because I wanted to talk about my bank and all the minimizations to that I've done since the last video where I talked about minimizing my bank, so I'm going to talk about that and stop XP wasting after. So this is my bank. I just finished up my most recent round of viciously getting rid of stuff that I don't need, and now I have 48 items in my bank, which I'm really happy about, because that's one page in a small, like, fixed size client. So I've gotten rid of a lot of stuff, and I basically just have runecrafting supplies, farming supplies, and a few collection items that I really didn't want to get rid of, like my troubled brewing flags and my stuffed monster heads and stuff, and yeah, a few other odds and ends that would have been kind of a nuisance to get back. And also the silver necklace and the blue-right sword are items you can get during quests, and if you complete those quests you can never get them back. So I've had these items for over 4 years now, and I didn't really feel quite right about getting rid of them, even though I don't use them. But there is kind of a big part of me that still wants to get rid of everything except for my runecrafting and farming supplies, because I know that I'm never going to use these items, but it would feel kind of bad in case, you know, there was ever some circumstance where I wanted them again. I wish they would make it so you could store a few more of these items in your POH, and also I wish they would make it so you could take back your monster heads from your POH walls, because right now if you build them and destroy them you don't get the head back. And obviously getting my bank to so few items isn't really practical, but I guess, I don't know, since I did it in the first place down to that 250 items that I did in that video a month or two ago, it's kind of become an obsession for me, and just constantly wanting to get rid of things and see how small I can make my bank for no real good reason, but I guess part of it is just because if I get rid of all of those items, then I have less distraction, and it makes it maybe a little bit easier to keep myself on track and stay focused on runecrafting and not give in when I might have an urge to train another skill here and there. But I'm making full use of as much storage outside of my bank as I can, so I have lots and lots of things stored in my P-Wage, like all of my skilling outfits and all of my graceful sets and that kind of thing. And I'm using even my 6 Grand Exchange slots to basically store items, because you can put items in the Grand Exchange for a price that they'd never sell at, and it's basically the same thing as a bank spot. So I've got a few tradable stacks of items that I didn't want to get rid of just sitting in the Grand Exchange there. I also made use of some of the hidey holes, or stash units, whatever they're called. I stored my arc light in one of them, since that's an untradable that I didn't really want to get rid of since it was full of charges. And I stored my defender and my slayer helmet in another one, because both of those are untradables also that I didn't really want to get rid of, so that was kind of nice. So my goal with RuneScape now is just to enjoy it, keep it as simple as I can, don't stop runecrafting, and hopefully I'll get 200 mil runecrafting sometime in next spring, so probably around March at the earliest, I would guess, is when I'll finish 200 mil runecrafting if I can stay consistent with it. And then 200 mil farming will probably be done next June if I stay consistent with that, which shouldn't be too hard to do. So I'm really looking forward to getting 200 mil farming, because then I can get rid of even more items in my bank and make my gameplay even simpler and not have to have the distraction of doing farm runs a couple times a day. For some reason, the thought of doing something like fishing and not having to do farm runs and just being able to never leave the Barbarian Lake for weeks or months at a time sounds incredibly appealing after having to do farm runs every day for several years so far. But yeah, for anyone who may have been wondering, if I do end up finishing 200 mil runecrafting, then the next skill I want to do is fishing, and then agility after that. The thought of having all 4 of those 200 mils, mining, runecrafting, fishing, and agility, just sounds really appealing to me. They're the skills that I really enjoy and the skills that I think are most impressive to have 200 mil in, so if I myself was able to get all of those, then that would be the dream. So if those are the skills that I continue to work towards consistently, then I maybe would be able to finish all 4 of those by sometime in 2019. By the end of next year, I could probably have runecrafting and fishing done, and then agility would be another couple thousand hours of Brimhaven from here. So that's probably about as much rambling as I can do about my gameplay and my progress and that kind of thing. So that's where I'm at, but there's a fair amount of other things on my list that I'd like to talk about, things that have come up and things that are worth discussing. A few weeks ago, I did receive a 2-day ban for a macroing miner charge, and it was for usage of AHK. When I went back to runecrafting, I decided to start using AHK again because I really despise Windows mouse keys, and still had the AHK script sitting around that I used to use for runecrafting, and it accomplishes the same thing as mouse keys, but I don't really want to go into that too much. But if you compare my gameplay in this video to my gameplay in my last video, I was using AHK in that last video, I'm using mouse keys now, so if you really want to see the difference between the two, you can take a look at both of these videos and see if you can tell the difference. The only actual functional difference is that I have to press 2 keys to get down the further distance for crafting guild teleport and withdrawing items from the bank, as opposed to with my AHK script I just had 1 key that would go down the further distance and 1 key that would go down the shorter distance. But in terms of the feel, it feels exactly the same, and I can do it at exactly the same speed. The reason that I and pretty much everybody who's ever used mouse keys hates it is because you have to have control held down, and makes it so you can't use a lot of other things on your computer, because if you try to type or anything else with control held down, it won't work. And it's annoying to have to keep toggling it all the time, and with AHK you could just have a couple keys remapped to those mouse actions and not disrupt the rest of your computer user experience. So that's why so many people prefer AHK to mouse keys, basically. But yeah, I don't really want to get banned again, because if I do, it'll be perm, so back to mouse keys for me. It's not really that big of a deal, it's just kind of a nuisance. A fair amount of people have asked me whether I'm still doing polyphasic sleeping, and for those who don't know, that's when you sleep in more than one block of time per day. So instead of sleeping for 7 hours or 8 hours or something, you'd sleep a couple times for maybe 3 hours or something like that. And there's all sorts of different schedules, and I've experimented with it a little bit, and I was doing a biphasic, I think it was called, schedule I did it for 5 weeks, where I was sleeping for 3.5 hours at dusk, and then I would get up in the middle of the night, and then I would sleep for another 3 hours at dawn. And it was a pretty nice schedule, and I enjoyed it a lot, but once I started working at the beginning of July, I stopped doing that schedule because I was a little bit concerned about oversleeping, and I didn't want to risk that being late to work, basically. So that's why I stopped, and it's been about 2 months since I started, and I've just been doing 7 hours a night most of the time, and occasionally oversleeping. My previous schedule was 6.5 hours a day, so going to 7 hours isn't really much of a difference in terms of hours slept, and I haven't felt a strong desire to go back to polyphasic again, but maybe at some point I will. It can be a fun thing to do, but you have to be very disciplined with it, because if you oversleep even somewhat regularly, then your schedule won't really work very well. Fossil Island is coming out this Thursday, and I've had some people asking my thoughts about it, and I did watch the hour-long preview stream that they did of it, and they're doing another one on Wednesday, the day before it comes out. The mushroom forest thing looked pretty cool. I didn't think the swamps looked very good, though. I don't really like the flashy kind of graphics that Ghost does, and I could definitely notice some of those in the swamp. As far as the content, we have no idea how it's actually going to be. We have general concepts presented to us, but that doesn't really say much about the content. We don't know how it's actually going to feel to play, and we won't know that until it comes out, so there's not much I can really say. I hope that Volcanic Mine has a somewhat high skill cap, isn't extremely AFK, and is interesting content, and if so, then I won't be too salty about it. I just will be disappointed if it's very AFKable, I guess. And my biggest personal hopes for Fossil Island is that it will cause the price of magic seeds to drop, because they did mention that magic seeds are going to be dropped by various things on the island, which is a good sign. Magic seeds right now are 210k, and they've hit as high as 220, I think, recently. And that's really bad. They used to be 125k before the Zulrah nerf, so it would be great if there was a consistent supply of magic seeds coming back into the game. I feel like they have become severely overpriced, and farming is actually the most expensive buyable in the game, unless you're doing something like mahogany tables or Dagonoth bones or something like that. But yeah, farming is about 12 GP per XP right now, which is pretty crazy. Prayer is only 10 GP per XP or something, and construction is maybe 8 GP per XP with oak. And farming before Zulrah nerf was maybe 7 GP per XP, so it's nearly doubled in price, which is just kind of crazy. And so yeah, as a farmer who still has a year of farming left, it would be great if I could save a few hundred mil, maybe put that money into finishing 200 mil smithing instead, since I only need to spend about 200 mil or so more to finish smithing with gold, which is what I plan to do sometime. But yeah, my general hopes for Fossil Island is that the new content on there is generally interesting and engaging, and sort of meets the criteria that I described in my last video when I talked about what I think makes good skilling content. And I kind of hope that the metagame, the most efficient skilling methods, aren't really changed. The skills that are going to have new methods are fishing, agility, hunter, thieving, and mining. And those are all skills that I really like, and really like the way that they're trained now. So if there is methods that is more efficient for them, then I hope that those methods are really, really fantastic, or not that much better, so I don't feel too bad about just continuing to do the methods that I have been expecting I will be doing. And also, pretty much all of the skilling methods, other than the Volcanic Mine, are multi-skilling methods. So there's a fishing and hunter one, there's a thieving and agility one, I think, and I don't really like the idea of training two skills at the same time, especially when the rates are close, because then it basically just turns two skills into one skill, because it's the same method for both skills. And that kind of takes away from the skills, I feel. It brings less diversity to the game, because instead of doing two different methods for two different skills, you're doing just one method for two skills. But if the content is really nicely designed and plays well, then I think it could still be a good thing. So my last video, the one where I was complaining about old school, got a lot more attention than I really expected. 130 something K views, which is more than my average video, and it was about even likes and dislikes, and sparked a lot of discussion in the community, which I am glad of. So thank you everybody for taking it seriously, and it did, I think, spur some positive things, even though it was a rather negative and critical video. I feel kind of bad for being a little bit harsh on Fossil Island without really knowing. I might not feel bad about it anymore once Fossil Island comes out if it ends up being bad, and if it ends up being good, then I'll continue to feel bad about it. But yeah, I actually spoke to Mod Maz, who's the primary person on Fossil Island, and she had watched the video, and so that made me feel extra bad, because I said that I thought Fossil Island was going to be shit, basically, and it's kind of her baby. But respect to her for being the bigger person and still being willing to talk to me, and started up a Discord channel with a few high-level skillers to, you know, work on some possible future skilling content. And I think that, if anything, I think Maz at least has the thought in mind of really trying to make the skilling content on Fossil Island as good as it can be, which I'm glad of, so I am sort of hopeful for it in a way. There was one thing in particular that a lot of people criticized me for in that last video, which is they said that I contradicted myself by first saying that I think people should play the game how they want to and do their own thing, and then later saying that I want the game to be how I want it to be, and I don't really care about, you know, Jagex making money or anything else really. I just want the game to be how I want it to be. And a lot of people consider that contradictory, which I can understand, but thinking about it myself and my intentions when I said those two things, I don't really see those as contradictory at all, because I mean, of course, basically everybody who's playing this game wants the game to be how they want it to be. It doesn't really make sense for that not to be the case. Everybody is kind of pulling this game slightly in their own direction to try to shape it to be how they want to be, if they're ever participating in community discussions about updates or anything like that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that all those people who want the game to be a certain way expect it to be that way. And there's a pretty big distinction there. I've always been fairly vocal about my thoughts on the game, and made efforts where possible to try to steer the game in the direction that I want it to go in, but I by no means expect the game to be exactly how I want it to be, especially since my opinion is generally unpopular and doesn't represent the majority of the player base. So by saying that I think people should stick to their own thoughts about the game and play the game how they want to and that kind of thing, and then saying that, you know, I want it to be how I want it to be, doesn't mean that I'm disregarding how other people want the game to be how they want it to be, if that makes any sense. I probably didn't say that very well, but I feel like maybe you understand a bit better what I mean now. And the last thing that I had on my list of things that I wanted to touch on in this video is, I get on pretty much every single video comments about how I sound depressed and must want to kill myself and all that kind of thing because I play so much RuneScape, which is just getting kind of old. I mean, I'm still going to continue to get lots of those comments, but I figured it would be worth talking about. For one thing, I'm not depressed and have never really been seriously depressed, and for another thing, I don't really play that much RuneScape anymore. I mean, if I really went as hard as I possibly could, I could play maybe 50 or 60 hours in a week with my full-time job right now, but I am not playing that much and don't really want to. I'm probably going to be playing more like 30 to 40 hours a week, which, you know, is a fair amount, but most of that is on the weekend. I can only play a few hours on days that I have work, because I work 8 hours and then I have about 40 minutes to an hour commute each way as well, so my day is pretty long, and, you know, get home, make dinner, sit down with my girlfriend, spend some time together and that kind of thing, and then have a few hours to play RS and watch some shows or streams or whatever, and then go to bed, and that's my average weekday. So there were times in my life, yeah, where I was spending the majority of my time in RS when I had that time available, but when I don't have that time available, I obviously am not letting RS get in the way of more important things, and I don't really have a strong desire to. Of course, I do wish I could play a little bit more now than I do, but it's not really something that bothers me that much, because I know that I'm doing things that I want to do outside of RS, and I'm generally living a life that I have been wanting to live for a while, and I'm enjoying it quite a lot. I've been studying for the past couple of years to go into software engineering, and now I'm working full-time as a software engineer as part of my education, but I'm getting the real experience in the workplace, and so that's something that I've wanted to do for a while, and it feels very rewarding to actually be there now and be making enough money now that I can afford an apartment that's nicer than my older place, and I don't have to share with so many people, and it's actually feels like our own place that we can, you know, make our own. And at my old place I had 4 roommates, and you know, 2 of them had boyfriends that were over all the time as well, so there was just a zoo in that house, and it was messy and people didn't clean up very well and that kind of thing, and I didn't really like it there. But that's why I had the goal of getting out of there and finding a better place, and now that that's happened, it's really satisfying, and I feel like I've continued to move up in life over the past few years, and at no point have I ever really been depressed. It's just kind of how I am and how I always have been, to be, I guess, sort of stoic, but generally just not highly excitable, and don't tend to talk with a lot of excitement in my voice, I guess, but that's just because, I don't know, that's how I talk. I don't really know how to describe it, but yeah, I'm not depressed. I haven't been depressed since high school, really. High school just kind of sucked, but ever since I got out of high school and got out on my own, I've really enjoyed my life a lot, and I've enjoyed all the RS that I've played too, and I really have no regrets on that front. So this video is probably going to be long. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I have right now 40 minutes of raw footage, but I tend to take a lot of pauses when I'm collecting my thoughts, so it'll probably cut down to 30 minutes or so after I edit it. So shout out to the people who are dedicated enough to listen to me talk about random shit for that long. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I guess my next video will be, if Fossil Island is interesting enough, maybe I'll make a video talking about my thoughts on it, and if not, then I have no idea what my next video will be, so leave me suggestions or something. But yeah, thank you for watching.